Dear friend, while the world outside still curls beneath the weight of restless sleep, while dawn has yet to lift the veil of night, there exists a sacred moment, a space where the soul can quiet down and meet God in profound stillness. It is in this moment that God does not shout to be heard, He whispers. And whoever is awake enough to listen will hear His gentle yet powerful voice saying, "My child, don't run, find refuge in me." Psalm 11. It might appear to be a hymn for warriors, for those facing enemies, darkness, and evil. But deeper still, it is a tender whisper of a God who never forsakes His children. It is a quiet yet unwavering affirmation. Even if the world trembles and hearts grow cold, He remains, in His holy temple, unshaken and untouchable. Have you ever felt like a little bird, startled by invisible arrows flying at you from all directions? Have you ever wanted to escape, to fly far away from your reality, from wounds you cannot share with anyone? Stop for just a moment. Take a deep breath. Let your heart return to the only place that has always been safe, the arms of God. When God becomes your refuge, you no longer need to fear the darkness, because He is not only the light to your path, He is the one holding your hand through every step, every nightfall, every yet formed morning. This psalm begins with a powerful declaration. In the Lord I take refuge. That is not the decision of someone weak. It is the courageous act of someone who knows they are not alone. We do not take refuge in illusions, nor do we lean on human promises or false hopes. We choose to trust the one who sees the whole picture, who knows the future, and who loves us even in our weakness. There is nothing about your life that escapes God's view. Not a single tear falls without His notice. Not a single unspoken whisper of your heart is unheard. And you know what? The very first verse of Psalm 11 also contains a question. How can you say to me, flee like a bird to your mountain? That question is a wake-up call for us today. To realize that running away is never the answer. Rather, standing firm in faith, finding refuge in the Lord, that is the path to true peace. This life offers so many voices tempting us to quit, voices of fear, of doubt, of people who don't understand your journey of faith, but you are not walking this path alone. Even as the moral foundations and righteousness in this world seem to crumble, God's holy temple stands firm. He is the foundation that cannot be shaken. If your heart feels weary today, surrounded by negative words, envious glances, or the cold silence of those you once trusted, remember, you have a place to return to, and it's not far. It's right here as you read these words, opening your heart and letting God whisper, I see you, I know you, and I will never forsake you. Psalm 11 is not just about standing against evil or escaping traps. It's a song of faithfulness, of placing unwavering trust in the one who never changes. It calls us not to let circumstances define our faith, but to let unshakable faith define how we face our circumstances. Even in its first lines, Psalm 11 offers us a new perspective on strength. Not a loud, worldly kind of power, but the quiet, unyielding strength that comes from placing our trust in God. And that strength is not showy. It is quiet but steady, hidden but immovable. You don't need to pretend to be strong when you're bleeding inside. God doesn't demand perfection. He longs for a heart that knows how to return, to take refuge, and to trust. Dear beloved, just as your heart begins to settle in the first breath of the day with God, reality may come knocking once again with its familiar sounds, an unresolved worry, a message that tightens your chest, or simply the vacant stare of someone who makes you feel forgotten. And suddenly, you realize The foundations you once trusted, people, careers, finances, or even yourself, are beginning to shake. In Psalm 11:3, a profound question is asked: when the foundations are destroyed, what can the righteous do? This is not just a philosophical inquiry. It is the cry of every heart that has felt its world falling apart piece by piece. It's that feeling when the things you once held as certain suddenly seem fragile, like sand slipping beneath your feet. And dear friend, if today you find yourself in such a moment, when marriage is cracking, when a loved one betrays you, when illness arrives uninvited, or when the future becomes as unclear as the morning mist, know this: you are not alone. God has seen these foundations long before they started to shake. He knew the day would come when we would have to stand in the midst of collapse. But He also knew it is in that very place that true faith is revealed. The Lord is in His holy temple. This is not just a statement found in Psalm 11, it is a tender reassurance. Even when everything around you crumbles, He, the God of the universe, your Creator, remains seated on His throne, still watching, still sovereign, still in control. You may ask, why didn't God stop the bad things from happening? Perhaps He didn't stop them. But not because He's indifferent, it's because He wants you to know that faith in Him is not only for sunny days, but for standing firm in storms. When the foundations shake, God does not simply want you to stand. He wants your roots to grow deeper. Like an old tree gripping the earth through violent winds, your roots must dig deep into His Word, into the truth that you are never abandoned, even when circumstances shout otherwise. Remember this: external foundations may fade, but the inner foundation, God's presence in your soul, never changes. When the world around you shifts, He remains unshakable. Perhaps you were taught to always be strong, to always be in control, to overcome things by your own strength. But in Psalm 11, God does not ask you to do that. He does not say, try harder. He simply says, take refuge in me. This is not the voice of a distant deity. It is the whisper of a loving Father, arms wide open. And you know what? Trials do not make you weaker. They simply reveal where you've placed your trust. If your faith rests on temporary foundations, you'll tremble when they fall. But if your heart rests in God, the one who still stands when storms rage, you will find you're not collapsing. And here's the beautiful truth. In the very moment everything seems to fall apart, you are given the chance to rebuild, this time on solid rock. God doesn't just comfort you, He walks with you. He builds again with you, with the same hands that have lifted up generations before you. Let yesterday's wounds no longer chain you down. Let them become the launching pad that propels your faith forward. Let your losses not make you bitter, but deepen your hunger for intimacy with God. He sees you, not with eyes of judgment, but as a father waiting for his child to come home after every fall. Every tear you've shed, He has collected. Every silent prayer, He remembers. You don't have to rebuild alone. You don't have to carry the unnamed burdens by yourself. He is your new foundation. And from that foundation, your life can be rebuilt, stronger, deeper, and more beautiful than ever before. The Lord sees everything. He examines the righteous. Psalm 11:4. And you know what? Testing is never without purpose. It is where God refines you like gold in fire, burning away the false, revealing what is true. A humble heart, a faith that cannot be shaken, a living trust that is not dependent on circumstance, but rooted in a worthy Savior. So if you find yourself in the midst of ruins, smile, because this is not the end. It's the beginning of a stronger faith, of a deeper walk, and you are not walking it alone. Dear friend, when people's hearts grow cold, when justice is no longer praised but mocked, the one who chooses to live with integrity suddenly feels out of place. Perhaps you've experienced this. When you live according to truth, you're not applauded but misunderstood. When you refuse shortcuts, you're not celebrated but met with suspicion and criticism. But you know what? It is in those very moments that Psalm 11 comes alive more than ever, because it affirms this one truth: the Lord still sits on his throne. He still sees, he still watches, and he loves the righteous. The Lord is in his holy temple. The Lord's throne is in heaven. This verse is like an anchor, keeping our hearts from being swept away by the storms of the world. The moral foundations of society may be crumbling, truth may be distorted, justice may be buried, but God remains unchanged. He is the righteous judge, the lighthouse shining through a sea of chaos. You don't need to understand everything that's happening in order to keep trusting. You just need to remember this: God is not blind. He sees every action, every word, every thought, yours and the world's. And he promises that he will test the righteous, but judge the wicked. Right now, you are being called to live a countercultural life. Not blending into the habits of the world, not accepting the normalization of evil, but holding on to righteousness as your living declaration. But how do you stay upright when everything around you is filled with injustice and envy? How do you not grow weary when the wicked seem to prosper and the upright seem to suffer? You don't have to answer those questions alone. Psalm 11 answers them for you. The Lord tests the righteous. He hasn't abandoned you. He is refining you. Like gold in the fire, you are being purified through every circumstance, every harsh word, and every moment of loneliness you face. Sometimes you may feel like you're standing in a storm, with no one beside you and no place to lean on. But it's in that very moment that the Lord is closest to you. He is whispering to your heart, "My child, stand firm. I see it all. And your reward is not handed out by the world. It comes from my own hand." You are called not just to be good, but to be a light. And light shines brightest in the dark. No one lights a lamp to hide it. Likewise, your life, if rooted in righteousness, will be a beacon set on high, guiding those weary souls who are searching for direction. Maybe your quiet consistency is the very reason someone else doesn't give up. Maybe your smile, your mercy toward those who've hurt you, is the answer to someone's silent prayer. Maybe your silent righteousness is the loudest message in a world that has lost its way. And this is where Psalm 11 becomes your breath. No longer just words to memorize, but life itself, in every step you take, every choice you make, and every word you speak. You no longer fear the arrows that fly in the dark, no longer waver at the world's rejection, because you know His face beholds the upright. What is more precious than the loving gaze of God? What is stronger than a heart witnessed by the Lord? Even if the world doesn't understand you, even if no one sees the right choices you make, God sees, and that is enough. So don't be quick to blame the world for its unfairness. Don't grow faint when the righteous weep and the wicked laugh. Let God be the judge. Let Him be the light for your eyes, the measure for every step you take. You are not alone. You are a silent warrior, surrounded by heavenly armies. Every act of righteousness you make is a spiritual weapon, forcing the darkness to retreat. And every moment you remain steadfast in righteousness is a declaration that I believe in a God who is still at work. Dear beloved, sometimes the only thing standing between you and despair is a prayer. A whisper seemingly small, yet powerful enough to shift the heavens. In your weakest moments, prayer is not the last thing you should do, but the strongest thing you can do. And in Psalm 11, prayer is not a weak plea. It is a firm declaration. It is the cry of a heart that has learned to rise, not by its own strength, but by the grace and love of the Almighty. Imagine stepping into battle, but instead of steel weapons, you're armed with truth. Instead of a physical shield, you're covered by the promises of God. And instead of fighting alone, you have the Lord leading you. One who has never lost a single battle. This prayer is not merely a list of things you're asking God to do for you. It's a confession, a refuge, a sigh, and also a proclamation of faith. Even when you don't yet see the miracle, you choose to believe that God is already at work. Have you ever felt like unseen forces are holding you back? Emotional, spiritual, financial, or relational barriers that keep you stuck? This prayer is a declaration. Lord, I do not accept delays from darkness. I desire only what you have destined for me, to be fulfilled in your time, in your way, according to your will. Every word spoken creates a sacred space around you, where the enemy cannot reach. You're saying, I do not belong to fear. I do not live under a curse. I am not limited by my past or by poisoned words. I live in the light of the one who called me by name and loves me completely. That prayer doesn't just protect you, it heals you. When you say, Lord, break every chain that binds me, you are granting him access to intervene deeply into the places in your soul where pain still lingers, where fear hides behind masks, where you've believed you were not enough, not strong enough, not worthy. But he sees you. He knows, and he does not despise your weakness. In fact, it is there he chooses to pour out his grace. Prayer becomes the cloak of courage. Though storms may rage outside, within you lies peace that surpasses all understanding. When you say, no weapon formed against me shall prosper, you're not speaking to your circumstances, you're speaking to your soul. You're reminding yourself that you are not anonymous in this vast universe. You are loved, you are chosen, and you are being protected by a love that has no condition. This prayer is also a refusal. You refuse to let negative voices, judgmental eyes, or deceitful people dictate your worth. You choose to stand, not in your own strength, but in the invisible yet powerful protection of God. Do you know what's miraculous? Each time you pray, you're not just seeking help. You're becoming someone stronger, deeper, and more compassionate. Prayer doesn't only change your situation, it changes you. You begin to see everything through the lens of grace, of hope. The things that once shattered you now become stepping stones that raise you higher. And each morning as you lift your prayer, you are doing something no one can take away from you. You are paving the way for a miracle. So keep praying, even if you're tired, even if you see no result yet, even if no one around you understands. Pray as though your soul depends on it, because it truly does. Dear beloved, after all the storms, the prayers, and those quiet moments of refuge in God, what remains in your soul? Perhaps it is a gentle stillness, like a calm lake after the rain. Perhaps it is a sense of healing that requires no words. Perhaps it is the deep awareness that you no longer walk alone in this life. As we reach the end of Psalm 11, what becomes most clear is not that enemies have vanished or that challenges have ceased to exist, but that your posture has changed. Your heart no longer trembles at the arrows of darkness because you now know what is meant for you is already covered by the power and mercy of God. Faith is not an exemption from suffering, but a bridge between human weakness and the power of the Almighty, and you have learned this. With every step, every breath, every whispered word, you are clothed in righteousness, equipped with truth, and upheld by unceasing prayer. Psalm 11 is no longer just a lesson. It has become a new way of living, where you are no longer the frightened bird longing to flee, but one who is led by the light of the Lord, where you no longer run from the enemy, but stand firm, declaring, "No weapon formed against me shall prosper." Isaiah 54:17, where you no longer fear the crumbling foundations of moral truth, but you become the one who guards them, who rekindles the flame through your life, through your daily choices. Now, you can move forward, not because life has become easier, but because you've been given a different kind of strength, a strength that comes from within, a strength that cannot be taken by outside circumstance. It is the strength of a soul that knows it belongs to God, and that nothing, no enemy, no curse, no cruel word, can separate you from His love. And you know what is most precious? It is not merely the protection from evil, but your ability to reflect God's loving light in the midst of darkness. You are a small light in this world. That light comes from your trust, your prayers, your steady heart in truth, and from how you choose to respond to evil with gentleness. The prayer you just journeyed through is not an ending, but a beginning. A beginning for a new day, a new season, a new way of living. Walk forward, no longer afraid, no longer discouraged, but with a tender heart and resolute steps. And if there is one last truth you should carry today, let it be this: you are protected, you are loved, you are chosen, and you are being led. May the peace of the Lord touch your soul like a gentle breeze. May you always have the strength to stand, not because you are strong, but because the one who is with you is almighty. May you, through each day of your life, become a living testimony to the love, kindness, and delivering power of the God who never abandons those who take refuge in Him. Live, not just to survive, but to shine. And remember, in the hands of God, you are always safe. Amen.